quote is, "You can be what you can't see." So I'm curious, why is that one of your favorite quotes?
I'm a firm believer of that because it's hard sometimes, like depending on like where kids like grow up or where you're exposed to, for them to like reach for the stars if you don't have like that champion or have somebody to, look up to that looks like you or you can relate to. So I think for me, like that was another reason why I went into education because like you always hear, oh, well, there's not a lot of African American men that are pursuing teaching. Or when you're looking at the minority numbers to get kids to computer science and engineering, they suck. But nobody ever talks about, like, you can give the kids resources. But if they don't have someone that they can relate to that, has some of the same struggles or they can really, hang on to, the numbers are still going to stay the same. So it's all about that positive role model. Because like I said, I was going to basketball games, football games, chess, cross. I was going to everything, even when I was coaching track. I'm a little older than the kids. I may not run, all the 400s with you, but I'll still get out there and, run a few with you. Because then over the years, like kids will be like, oh, yeah, well, in practice, like Mr. Sanders, oh, he's going to push us because when we're at the meet, that's the mind frame that we have. Like if Mr. Sanders catches us, it doesn't count. If I do bad thing, Mr. Sanders is going to be like, oh, yeah, that didn't count. That didn't count. So run it again. That's all about, just like that exposure piece and just being like that positive role model. I think that goes a long way when you have somebody, hey, I do actually know an engineer. I actually do know a computer scientist, or I actually do know a doctor or a lawyer. So
yeah, so it gets especially complicated when we think about the various intersectionalities and whatnot. So I'm curious, how does that quote kind of inform your own approach in CS education?
by now, it's just really like just embedded in my brain. So when I'm making those decisions, I'm thinking about like all the students. And then I also love the quote, like, I'm as strong as my weakest link. So making sure that like, hey, now that I'm in this supervisor role, this county may have all the resources, but if this county doesn't have, resources to get them over the finish line, the chain is still broke. That's kind of how I, approach things. Like even when I'm talking like different like curriculum providers, hey, I know you're sure very aware of this like pandemic. So how accessible is your curriculum on a smartphone? It doesn't have to be the best, but I know that some kids do not have internet. All they do is have a cell phone. So can they still access it on, a mobile phone or stuff like that? So I try to think of everything as this holistic approach. I also have like pictures on my desk of like different students that I've met over the years. And that also kind of keeps me like in that mind frame because I've worked at schools where kids were taking a bus to get to school. And it wasn't like the regular bus. They're actually taking like the city bus. They're coming 40 and 50 minutes, just to get to school, then take another 40, 50 minutes just to get home. So how can I make computer science equitable for this child? How can I make it equitable for this person? How can I make it equitable for the individuals in the rural areas? How can I make it equitable for the individuals that are at schools that really want to learn computer science, but unfortunately their school doesn't have all the resources? So what am I going to do to make sure that those kids still have a fair chance at pursuing just computer science education as a whole?
This excerpt of the CSTA podcast is from episode number 88, which is titled Connecting with and Listening to Students with Dominick Sanders.